so we're gonna go ahead now and demonstrate how to do a tensor wrap for, I'm gonna show you the technique for an adductor strain, so if the athlete has a groin strain, but it's very similar to what you would do with hip flexor. So I'll talk about both, and the demonstration will go through a full wrap for an adductor strain. So first off, what we're gonna do, whenever you're going around muscles, you always wanna make sure that they're contracted. So we're gonna lift the heel on this athlete, shorten the gastrocs. We're gonna get the athlete in a lunge position. I'd actually like you to widen this leg a bit, there we go. So you want them to keep their weight all on this front leg because we are gonna go around. And here's one of the differences for adductor versus hip flexor. If we're trying to support the groin, we're going to rotate the foot inwards, so ask them to turn their foot inwards, and then everything else is the same starting position. So you're gonna start with a wrap, do a couple rounds around the thigh, just to create a firm base here. And when we're doing the adductor, we are starting on the outside of the leg, working our way in. So we're going lateral to medial, because when we get to crossing the hip, we want this tensor to be pulling our leg into adduction to support that adductor muscle, so that you won't actually be able to extend it all the way out into full abduction, into abduction. So you're giving that muscle a little bit of support. If I was going to do a hip flexor wrap, I would start medial to lateral. So for hip flexors alone, you're trying to support the hip into flexion. So when you go around it, you're coming up and you're actually going to be lifting here. So you're giving it a lift, a boost into hip flexion. Just for the sake of the video, our athlete is still wearing shorts. If this was pre-competition or pre-practice, what I would ask is that the athlete just comes in to get wrapped with compression shorts on, because you really want it to be as close to skin as possible, and you wouldn't want to put it over top of any bulky clothing like this. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our adductor wrap. So start on the outside of the thigh. When we're doing wraps around the muscle, again, make sure all the weight is on this leg, the muscle is contracted, and we're going to go around 2 times here to make sure that it's secured on her thigh, okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to start to alternate. It's almost like a figure 8 with the tensor. We're going to go once around her hips and then come back and repeat it around her leg. So we're going to cross the body. This is where I was talking about protecting our leg, bringing it into a deduction, so that if they swing out, say it's a hockey player, they swing out in that full abduction stride, they're not going to get the strain on the muscle. So we're going to come across. This is where you give it a good pull. This is the direction we're trying to restrict. You're going to go across their hips, all the way around the back, and then back down, okay? So it's important that you don't pull too tight across their back. So this here is not where I want to be applying my force, all right? So when you come around, you want it to be tight enough to stay in place, but you're really not pulling a ton. So then I'm still working my way proximally up her leg. So I'm going to come up a little bit more. I'm going to repeat this figure 8. This is where I want to pull and add that force. So I give it a good amount of tension here. And then when I get her on the back, I'm just laying it down. Okay, so not a lot of force. If your tensor in the back is too high, you can actually create some pain in their back. So we don't want to do that. Lay the tensor down here, and then just repeat, working your way all the way up. Nice force across into a deduction. Back around. And then from here, we're just going to repeat until we run out of tensor. Always pulling into a deduction. Okay, that's really the only place that you actually pull and put a lot of force through the tensor. The rest of the time, you're just stretching it less than 50%. So then I'm just going to get the athlete to hold on to the end of the wrap there. Just to hold it in place, we always go over it 1 full cycle around with our elastic tape, and that will help hold it in place well. Okay, go ahead and let go. So again, even with the tape, make sure you don't pull too tight around the leg. We're only adding that force right across into the abduction. Back, just laying it it down, and then we can end that roll. Okay, and then when the athlete stands straight up, okay, so from here, and again, like for the purpose of the video, we've done it over top of their sweatshirt, but like I said, this would be underneath, as close to skin as possible. Ideally, they would only have on a pair of compression shorts, and you would do the wrap up to next to their skin. And then from here, if the athlete goes and swings their leg out into abduction, you'll see that this really protects too much excessive movement.